Hey everybody, it's Andy. Welcome back to my weekly show where I help you build a career you love. Today, we've got a great one on how to beat an internal candidate in a job interview. Got 5 or 6 pretty good tips, and these tips are not just for those individuals who are competing with internal candidates. They're going to be good for anybody. They're going to be just solid interviewing tips, but they are especially going to cover the disadvantages you have when you're going against an in-house candidate. So buckle up. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. If you are here with me live, get in the chat, say hello, tell me where you're from, what you need, put some question marks in front of any questions that you have because the chat gets pretty lively. If you're watching this on the recording, welcome to you too. You certainly don't need to put question marks in your comments. I'll be able to find them. So let's get right into this. I've been getting a lot of emails, comments on the YouTube channel and the blog, in the Mile Walk Academy training program about these situations. You are always susceptible when you are interviewing to be going up against someone internal. So let's go through these. Some of these are going to be pretty solid. Some of these are going to be pretty common sense, but I think the whole packaging you will enjoy. All right, so let's start with the first point. I realize that not everything that comes out of my mouth is earth-shatteringly brilliant, but sometimes these common sense points, the brilliance isn't in knowing the point, it's actually in the follow-through, right? We all know we're supposed to eat well, but do we? So this first step, I want to state the obvious, but I want to talk about it for a few minutes. I'm not even calling this step 1. So step 0 is you gotta ask. You gotta ask. This sounds really obvious, but actually, let's get into the chat right away. Let's engage the chat right away today. How many of you, raise your hand. How many of you ask if there are any internal candidates in the process? Do you ask if there are any candidates in the process? So think about this. It is very natural for you to ask, just like an employer asks you, are you interviewing with anybody else? It's always okay to say, hey, are there any other candidates in the process? Any internal candidates, any external candidates? Just I'm curious to know, what the candidate landscape looks like. It's always okay to ask that. Okay, now that may sound obvious, and you might even ask that up front. So I'm guessing some of you do, a lot of you don't. But even for the ones who do, can I get another show of hands if you continue to ask that throughout the process? Last week or so, I've had 3 or 4 people say to me, Andy, hey, can you shoot a video on how to beat internal candidates? I was humming along and I thought I had this one in the bag, and all of a sudden at the end, the hiring company said to me, hey, we decided to go with somebody internal. Well, just because there was nobody internal when you started doesn't mean somebody came in along the way. It doesn't mean somebody didn't bump into somebody in the hall and say, hey, we're interviewing for this position. So you got to stay on top of it all the way along the way. And if you want a little more help on that, let me see. This brightness stuff is really kind of ugh. If you want a little more help on that, you can check out my video on what to do if there are multiple candidates in the interview process. All right, so that's step 0. Step 1. This is these next couple of points, this is really kind of working to get you kind of even to ground zero. But first thing that you got to do, once you know there are candidates, internal candidates in, is you got to get intelligence on them. Which departments are they from? Where did they come from? Maybe are they somebody who's making a wholesale change? Is it somebody who maybe is in the junior analyst position and they're trying to just get promoted to the analyst position? So what is it about the internal candidates that you can discover? Is there any reason, Mr. Hiring Official or Mr. or Mrs. Screener, that you wouldn't just outright hire somebody internally? Is there something missing? Is there any reason that might not be the case? Or, is this interviewing more of a formality? You could try to get at these things. You would be amazed at how much information people are willing to share about this process. Some might say, well, the internal candidates just, they're not ready yet. They don't, we're looking for an outside opinion. Some are, we're going through a process. It is a requirement that we interview internal candidates and external candidates. You want to know, you want to make sure that you understand that. All right, step 2, still working towards getting you to ground zero. How do we neutralize home court advantage for them? So how do we level the playing field? What is it that you can do in order to kind of catch up with them so that you're somewhat neutral? Now, one of the things that I think really can help you level the field is being uber prepared. Doing your homework, making sure you know everything you possibly can about the company, the interviewers, and so on. But I want to make a special call out here to the job description. So, when you get the job description, you obviously should study up on it. You want to know what it is, what skills are required, what's important, what are bonuses, all those other things. But and you probably will study the job description harder than an internal candidate would. But I want you to take not just one extra step, but 2 extra steps. I want you to not only look at the job description that is being made available in the position that you're potentially being hired for. I want you to look at the next lowest position to make sure that you are 100% covered with the requirements of what that person or that team does. And then I want you to look at the next level up. So one step up if you can find it. If you're the analyst and there's a junior analyst and senior analyst position, so to speak, how close to the next level are you? Are you 10% there, 50% there, 80% there? These are things that you can pounce on in the interview by talking about how you're leveled up already or almost there already, or at least speak to the types of requirements that next position would call for. Will give you an extra leg up. So you want to make sure you check that out. Now, on this job description one, we did a live office hours. I want to say it might have been the beginning of last year, where I talked about how to ace the interview using the job description. So it's a live office hours show. All right, next one. Let's talk about these. I call them the sit cues. I'll explain what this is. But the situational interviewing questions, I want you to make sure that you check the environment and you check the data before you answer any of these questions. Let's talk about this. So, for those of you that follow me, I talk a lot about this. There are only 2 types of interview questions. There's questions about your past and there's questions about your future. So questions like, tell me about yourself, walk me through your resume, what did you like about your boss, why did you quit your job, tell me about a time when, how did you organize that project, what did you do then, All of that stuff is about your past. Generally speaking, dare I say 100% of the behavioral interviewing questions fall into that category. Then there's the other side of the time spectrum, which is about the future. So we have this project. How would you go about doing it? We have this customer. She's kind of a pain in the butt. She's always complaining about this, that, and the other thing. How would you interact with her? What would you do? How would you solve that problem? How would you build that team? How would you? So anytime you get asked a question that's situational in nature where you're going to talk about the future, any of these types of questions, forget what we're calling them for a second, just anything about the future, you want to make sure that before you discuss how you would do something, the first thing that you do is you tack down all the assumptions that you're going to make, and you get any additional information that you would need to know that would help you better package your response. So you can safely assume that the internal candidate is probably going to have a better understanding of what the internal operating environment is like, who the players are, what the problems are, what that likely is like. You need to catch up before you answer that question. Now, I would recommend you do that anytime you answer a situational interview question, but I want you to especially do it when you know you're competing against an internal candidate. It's just safe practice before you open your mouth. Make sure you know where you're going to go. Now, one thing that I did do is we shot a video on how to talk about the future. I've done this in several videos. I'll make some reference to those, but we've got a lot more on that. Now, the other thing that I want you to do, part 3 of step 2, is I want you to be as inclusionary as possible, inclusive of everything that you speak about, and your language should be team-oriented. So what do I mean? So as the interviewing process goes on, and you get more familiar with the players in the process, the people you're interviewing with, maybe the names of some of your your teammates, your team members, your internal customers, whoever that might be. But really hang on to who you're interviewing with, what it is they do, what their goal in life is, what their function is, and so on. So that as you get into the second interviews, the third interviews, and so on, even though you might not be repeating an interview with somebody, as you talk, if you talk to John and Jane in the first round and you're talking to Sally and Bob in the second round, you can speak to Sally and Bob in a manner that says, hey, I was talking with John and Jane the other day and they mentioned this about this upcoming project. It really resonated with me. I really liked their approach because, and here's my thoughts on it. I would love to get your insight on that. So the more that you can speak about being part of the team, the more you can speak about the people that you've already interacted with. Hopefully there's pleasantries that you can say about them and what they shared with you and how much it pumped you up. All of that stuff makes you sound and will make the interviewer feel like you're already part of the team, like you're already knowledgeable, like you'll walk right in the door and it'll be like having an old friend there. So it's really important that you do that. I actually shot a whole video on the second job interview. It's called Second Job Interview. It's probably like three tips to nail it or ace it or 3 keys to get hired or something like that. The video was so popular that it was stolen by 2 other YouTubers that copied the script exactly. I know I had to put some copyright strikes against them and get involved with YouTube and all the little fun stuff that goes with being a YouTuber. But true story, a total side story there. But it's a good video. Check that out. All right, now let's talk about what you are that they're not. So you get to this spot where, all right, you kind of caught up with them already. Well, what are you that they aren't? The glow of the newness, right? The excitement of what is to come. You are shiny, you are new, you are the future. There's a level of freshness to you. So that is likely your single greatest advantage if you have equal skill sets with an internal candidate. You might have additional skill sets that the internal candidate doesn't have, and that's great. But your greatest asset as somebody coming in off the street or outside the company is the fact that there is that glow of newness. Okay, that promise of tomorrow, the art of the possible, whatever you want to call it. So you need to lean on this, that your ideas may not be, all that new to you, but they might be fresh and futuristic to the company. So we talked about, when you talk about those situational interview questions, when you get asked those questions, you want to make sure that you kind of level up, get the background and data, and then go. But you also want to make sure that you're doing as much as possible, trying to shift the interview into the future. And I actually shot a video on this as well about this one job tip is guaranteed to get you hired. You should check that out because it talks about how to control the interview and get the interviewer into the future. Because that's much better for you to be able to connect the dots about how what you've done maps to what they'll do in their environment and where you can take them. And I want to drive this point home with a little here's how. I want you to remember this expression. You should use it often. Be generous with it in your interviewing process. So when you are asked about your past and you say, here's how we did it, or even if you're not asked about your past, when you're addressing situational interview questions, the futuristic stuff, here's how I did it in the past. Here's how we can apply that into your environment to move you forward. Here's how we can do this. Here's how we can change that. Here's how I would go about doing that. Everything is here's how. Here's how it'll happen for you. It gets them to imagine what life will be like with you. It will be very easy for them to see how what you have done can move them forward. Do not minimize the impact that newness has, especially for small and medium-sized companies. It's good for large companies too, although it's a little less powerful because they move a bit slower. Okay, so you want to make sure that, and then one other quick example before I move on to the next one is, true story, we're in the middle of a search right now for Mile Walk, my recruitment firm, and our operations officer at our client company is looking for a very senior consulting resource. And whenever we take a search, we always ask our clients, is there anybody internal that you would want to elevate before you go out and spend all this money with us to go out and find you somebody? And the woman said, we've got some people who are, could do the role or are already in the role. But we are really looking for an outsider's perspective, somebody that could come in that while they might not understand our products and services to the level that these internal folks already do, the things that are even more important to us are their methodology in building relationships with the clients, how they manage and implement solutions, how they run their projects, how they manage the risks, how they manage the scopes, how they do all of these other things that we would like them to also help teach and uptrain the people that we have doing that role right now that have kind of come in homegrown. So it's very, very powerful. You need to lean on that. All right, next one. So I guess this is step 4, so tip 5. Is the organization and the power of your questions. So internal candidates, they tend to be lazy when it comes to questioning. Why? They think they know everything. They think they know the environment. What are they more focused on? Their past, what they know. They rarely are focusing on the future because their greatest asset is that they work there. Your greatest asset is how you're going to change the way they work there. All right, so number 1 on this is make sure that you're asking great questions. We've talked a lot about how to do this. I've shot a lot of videos on that about how to ask your questions. The other thing, a few of them that come to mind are the top 5, my top 5 favorite questions to ask in an interview. I also talked about shot a video on how to ask questions in an interview. But one I want to call out, and I know I get this, you guys kick this back to me a lot. Those of you that follow me know I love the success question. If you don't know what this is, I'm going to tell you. So one of my absolute favorites, and I shot a video on this, the best question to ask or the most powerful question you can ask in a job interview is, if you were to give me this job or give me an offer and I was to accept it 1 year from now, what will I have done exactly that you would consider a raging success? Or anybody in this role, what will they have achieved? What will they have built, sold, managed, created, designed, optimized, reduced, whatever it is specifically? What are those success metrics and the outcomes that you want to occur specifically? You ask that question during your question asking period in the interview, then I immediately want you to go into storytelling about how you would go about doing that. Here again, you are the future, you are fresh, you are offering the perspective that here's how I would do that exactly. And they will love hearing that, will be music to their ears. Music to their ears. Why won't an internal candidate ask this? Because they're spending a lot of time talking about who they know, their comfort in the environment, and all that good stuff. You need to be thinking forward. Most of them generally think that their current situation is their most valuable asset. Just remember that. Keep that in mind. All right, that's 5. Now, I want to give you a bonus. This one is, if you can, this is not applicable to all positions, but if possible, future plans, 30-day, 60-day, 90-day plans are really great for you to leverage in the process. And I put this little thing down here, and I put "for me" in parentheses, and this is for me to remind me to tell you that when you raise this point in an interview, you need to do it in a manner as though you created this plan for you. I did this for me. So, Mr. Employer, I got to thinking, this is a little bit later in your process, right? Not in the screen, not in the first interview, but as you start to get to know them, you start to get a better understanding of what it is they're doing, what it is they're trying to do, where they want to go. I thought about, as part of doing my homework to evaluate whether I had the right skills, whether I was interested in doing this job, what it was that I was going to be called upon to do, I thought it would be great if I created kind of a 90-day plan so that I could see how I would go about this. Would I feel comfortable? Would I be able to do it well? And as a matter of fact, that plan told me that while I might not know everything and I'd have to adjust it based on information that I found and discovered once I got here, but it gave me a great level of comfort to know that I would do a great job in this role. So I did this for me, but if you're interested in seeing it, I would be happy to share it with you if that would be of interest. And then out you whip it, and then they look at it and they think, wow, this is great. Say, I understand, I'm going to have to make some adjustments, but this is how I would tackle it. And here's how I would go about it. Once again, showing that extra level of thoughtfulness, dedication to the process, dedication to your investigation, dedication to you making a good decision. And you do those things, I guarantee you will have a much better advantage and win out over an internal candidate. So make sure you're asking up front and you're repeating that process. So kind of step 0, step 1. First thing is, what did I say? Get the intel. Second thing is we want to level or third thing is we want to level the playing field. Fourth thing is we want to capitalize on your shiny and newness, right? And then fifth thing, we want to make sure that you were organized and diligent in your questions. And then the bonus, if you can put that plan together, if it's appropriate, if it's applicable, I highly recommend it. So I hope you love that. I know that was a quick one, but I really think that those are the areas to focus on. So if you're loving it, hit the little like button. I know my face is, I'm looking at the screen, it's a little shiny. I've got 2 quick announcements, actually 3 quick announcements. And then we'll go to the chat. If you're watching me on the recording, I'll see you next week.